So nice to be here. Yogi, you need to come to Hollywood. In Hollywood, we call you what is called a macher, a guy who gets things done. You told me about this conference some time ago, and I had my doubts, and yet here you are. Illustrious ladies and gentlemen, some of you fans of the old and the reckless. I grew up in Germany, born in 1941, and came to this country at the age of 18. So, been here for quite some time. This was in 1959. And played a lot of Germans on television, obviously mostly Nazis. And did a series called The Rat Patrol, 66 to 68, chasing, in a futile way, chasing American jeeps. The reality was often the other way around, but nevertheless. I became very perturbed about the German image in America. I grew up in a time when we didn't hear about the Second World War, except we noticed the fact that we had lost it. And I put together a speech that explains how I felt all these years over here. Thoughts on being German. When I accepted the invitation to speak at this fest, I began to ponder anew the question what it is like to be a German or German American. How do I define my Germanness? In personal terms, I have early memories of bombings and fires, of having to frantically be carried into the basement, of fear that gripped everyone at the sound of approaching Allied bomber squadrons, who would inevitably unleash their destructive fury on cities and villages like mine, only to leave burning farms and screaming animals in flames in their wake. I have memories of being hoisted onto the shoulders of my teenage brother so that I could see the city of Hamburg aflame after one of those devastating fire bombings that left the city an inferno in which tens of thousands of civilians perished in one night. I have memories of thousands of homeless and hungry people descending like desperate vultures from devastated cities like Hamburg and Kiel onto the countryside to frantically dig for any leftover potatoes or kernels of wheat. I have memories of Christmas Eves when my brothers and I had to recite poetry to the local Santa Claus and sing O Tannenbaum and Stille Nacht, Heilige Nacht. And only then could we turn to our presents. A pair of shoes, perhaps, which would have to last next Christmas. I have memories of makeshift ice hockey games on frozen ponds and soccer games with pig bladders because we couldn't afford a real ball. Memories of a beloved father suddenly dying, of long bicycle excursions through a beautiful countryside, of hard work on farms and hard school benches, of teachers who had come back from the Russian front with no legs or one arm, and great bitterness. Memories of long hiking excursions on hot summer days, singing Mein Vater war ein Wandersmann und mir liegt's auch im Blut. Of secret rendezvous and adolescent kisses with my first love, Rosalie, on country lanes. Of my mother saying, das können wir uns nicht leisten, when my brothers and I were coveting a pair of soccer shoes in the store windows. Oh, when I think of my hard-working, proud mother and father who experienced the two most cataclysmic wars and devastating wars in the history of mankind. And who each time had to start with nothing. I remember Tanzschule and waltzing and doing the tango and Elvis Presley and Louis Satchmo Armstrong, and I remember leaving it all behind one day in May when I was 18, while standing aboard the Hanseatic, waving goodbye to my family. While the orchestra was playing Junge, komm mal wieder nach Haus. I remember the first sighting of the Statue of Liberty, the skyline of New York City, the sweltering heat, the frenetic hustle and bustle of white and black and brown-skinned people, of taking the Greyhound bus through southern cities, where they had separate toilets and drinking fountains for whites and blacks, and where a genteel southern lady expressed her love for castles on the Rhine and Apfelstrudel, and asked me what I thought about Hitler. And I said I didn't and I hadn't. There we go. I remember fulfilling my childhood dreams of being a cowboy when I was in Montana and going to university there, and one day in a lecture on philosophy being asked in front of a whole class how it was possible that a country that had produced Goethe and Schiller and Beethoven and Schubert could produce Hitler in concentration camps. I was 18 then and couldn't answer. I remember the experience that left an indelible mark on my brain and my heretofore innocent German heart. It was in Los Angeles, in a movie theater, where I saw a documentary called Mein Kampf. I went to see it because its title promised something about Germany, and I was homesick. It showed scenes of concentration camps, goose-stepping soldiers, of Hitler-kissing babies, corpses piled high in makeshift mass graves in concentration camps, of dead German soldiers standing frozen in the wind and snow-swept steppes of Russia. It showed American soldiers liberating walking skeletons from the camps. It was then that I had lost my innocence, and no one was there to explain or quiet my deeply felt sense of anger. Betrayal and shame. Had my beloved father and mother been part of that? They just couldn't have. And yet I remember sending letters filled with anger and bitterness and inexplicable disappointment to my mother. I remember later playing soccer for a Jewish team called the Maccabees. And I fought hard for them, perhaps in the vain hope of atoning for the sins committed by some members of my parents' generation. I met Jews from Hamburg, a village in Hessen, from Cologne, Jews who had left in the 30s and who seemed more German in their old-fashioned ways and attitudes than I did. I met Jews who accepted me because I was too young, and Jews who did not accept me because I was German, and Jews who talked nostalgically of their favorite pre-war soccer teams, Eintracht Frankfurt, or Dresden, or Hamburg, or reminisce bitterly about the insidious ways of anti-Semitism. I met a German who called me a traitor because I played for a Jewish team. And I remember an Israeli teammate who talked like a racist about blacks and was suspicious of me because I was German. I remember my first agent in Hollywood. He's a Jew who was kind-hearted and helpful and gave me my first break in this tough business, show business in Hollywood. I recall Americans coming up to me when I played Captain Dietrich on the Rat Patrol saying, "I wish you Germans had won the war. We wouldn't have to worry about the damn Russians." I remember fighting with producers on how to play my role on the Rat Patrol. They wanted an eye patch and a limp so as to perpetuate the stereotypical image of a German soldier. And I insisted on playing the Rommel-like figure as a human being with dignity, because the German soldier of the Africa Corps who came back from the blood-soaked sands of Tunisia, Libya, of Egypt, were decent and brave and tough and fought for their country just like any other soldiers fighting for their countries. I remember a conversation with Kurt Jürgens on the way to the theater in New York, where I played his son in a Broadway play. And he thought I should go back to Germany, because in America, I would play nothing but those damn Nazis. And I said, it may take me a while, but I was determined to destroy that caricature. I was determined to show that we were human beings with all the strengths and frailties, with all the feelings and thoughts of any other human being. I remember my son coming home from school one day and telling me that he had been called a Nazi, and asked me, what that meant. And I remember my trying to explain something I'd taken years to study and understand to a little boy. I remember reading Schirer's Third Reich, Bullock's A Study in Tyranny, and Speer's Inside the Third Reich. And the best book about that fateful period by Sebastian Haffner, called Anmerkungen zu Hitler, Anecdotes to Hitler. I remember Simon Wiesenthal during an interview saying that the actual perpetrators of atrocities numbered about 100,000. And Henry Kissinger saying, under no circumstances is the post-war German generation to be held responsible for Auschwitz. And then the wall came down, and Americans came up to me with genuine feelings in their hearts and congratulated me, and it felt good to be German. And then my non-American friends from Europe and South America patted me on the shoulder and spoke with admiration and respect of the German national soccer team playing the World Cup in Italy. And then we became world champions. It was almost all too good to be true. And then came some editorials in the newspapers about the renaissance of German power and the caricature of Helmut Kohl as the new Hitler, and the many scathing remarks made by the cheap English press and character assassinations by Margaret Thatcher and her cabinet, all warning of German power whilst bemoaning the loss of their own. And as a German, I wanted to shout to the world, when will you ever stop talking about those damn 12 years? When will you ever give us credit for more than 60 peaceful democratic years during which Germany has been an exemplary democracy, a loyal ally of the Western Alliance, an unwavering friend of both America and Israel, a patient initiator through its Ostpolitik with the Communist East, a country that has opened its arms to more politically disenfranchised, the persecuted and hungry than any other, except perhaps America. When will you ever talk about and acknowledge the untold contributions made by German immigrants who toiled for you, America, as carpenters, farmers, mechanics, longshoremen, doctors and nurses, coal miners, machinists, lawyers, surgeons and generals, teachers and scientists. When, I ask? It will happen when we German immigrants and Americans of German descent start talking about it, and when we start addressing the issues that concern us, when we have dialogue amongst ourselves and with those who mistrust us, when we have evenings like this, Yogi Repman, when we open our hearts and extend our hands to each other and to those who are wronged by another generation. When we become aware of our profound contributions to the success and freedom and democracy that is America. For that purpose, a few friends of mine and I have founded the German-American Culture Society of Los Angeles. We wanted to preserve the histories of German Americans and the immigrant ancestors, be they Catholic or Protestant or Jew. Our formerly divided Germany has become one again. Let us not forget Reagan and Bush, Baker and Mitterrand, Kohl and Genscher, Gorbachev and Shevardnadze, who made the seemingly impossible a reality. And the thousands of brave East Germans who courageously cried out for freedom. Because of our historical legacy, we Germans have a profound responsibility to be tolerant of others and to cooperate as equal partners in this world of many peoples. Tonight, let us remember the many positive contributions the Germans have made to mankind. What does it mean to be German? It means that we are part of the community of mankind with a specific and complex heritage. And I'm proud of that heritage. Thank you. Thank you again to Yogi Repman and Gitta. Thank you. Yes.
Yes. A movie question.
Yeah.
In your movie, when you, movie question, in the movie Desert Fox.
Yes.
What was the title of the movie and exactly?
The series was called The Rat Patrol. It ran from 66 to 68. Some people here remember it, I think. Quite a few. So we filmed it in Spain, the first 16, and that was at the same time that Clint Eastwood did all of his Fistful of Dollar films in the south of Spain, near Almeria, and in the desert. And the Spanish army supplied all the tanks, all the extras, for $1 a day. And then someone stole a lot of money, so we had to come back to Hollywood and film in the Mojave Desert, which turned out to be cheaper than in Spain. So 2 or 3 people stayed in Spain afterwards. I think they were the culprits. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Anyway, thank you. And I do not, some people ask if I intend to retire. I don't. I still am young and restless. I still feel old and reckless sometimes. Been married many times on the show. Been doing it for 37 years. of all kinds of children. Don't remember them all. And the show has been #1 for 30 years, which is absolutely unheard of in the history of Hollywood. And the wonderful thing about it is that it really exports a part of American culture to the strangest places. And I remember walking the streets of Istanbul, and veiled ladies would approach me and blush under the veils. And in the intellectually demanding and somewhat arrogant and condescending city of Paris, they would suddenly lose their arrogant attitude and say, "Ah, hello, Victor, ça va bien." So, and in Israel, I've been there several times and was invited to the Knesset and met with Shimon Peres, one of the most impressive figures I've ever had the pleasure of talking to. And I asked him, I said, I come from a country that is now the main bloc of the European Union. Do you think that one day Israel will be the center of an economic union in the Middle East? He says, come here. Took me to the window. He says, down there is where my friend Yitzhak Rabin was killed. And that said it all. It was an extremist who killed Yitzhak Rabin, who was interested in a rapprochement with the Palestinians. Anyway, then I'm standing at the Wailing Wall, and when you're in Jerusalem, you're overcome with, you suddenly, I don't even know what the feeling is, but it's a feeling of deep awe about all the religions. And then you suddenly become aware of all the terrible wars that have been fought in the name of religion and parts of religion. The 30-year war in Germany, 1618 to 1648, essentially between Catholics and Protestants. The difficulties we have now in the Middle East, between Sunnis and Shiites. Anyway, you stand there, and then everyone is there and praying in front of the thing, and then you write on a piece of paper and you put it into the wall and hope it comes true. And suddenly I'm standing there deep in thought, and suddenly, Victor, Victor. That broke the moment. Then I walked up the Via de la Rosa for a while, thinking of Christ walking up that place with the cross on his back. And the shopkeepers came out, Victor, Victor. It felt so utterly sacrilegious. Anyway, so American culture, and the reason I mention this is because Yogi and I and Didi and various other gentlemen and Mr. Quelle, the Consul General from Chicago, remembers how influenced we were by American culture after the war. In that regard, Hollywood plays an enormous role. My mother saw Gone with the Wind 13 times. Only, only, yes. So I remember Louis Armstrong coming to a bombed-out city of Kiel after the war. Louis Satchmo Armstrong. And what an impression. What a great impression. My hero was Perry O'Brien, the shot putter. I won the German Youth Championship in shot put and discus and javelin, and I studied him very carefully. American culture was transported after the war very, very successfully. So we have to do everything we can to not cut the budget of the Foreign Service, of the State Department. That's a dumb decision. You win more friends with diplomacy, with culture, than you do with war, which is only necessary in the last minute, but nothing else works. Because war, hate to tell you, is terrible. It is so utterly dehumanizing. There are no words for it. And the accompanying poverty that comes afterwards, the resulting poverty, is even more dehumanizing. So we have to be very careful what we do. I think we need to do it, yes, have a strong fist, which we do. We have the strongest military here in America, in the world, No one comes close to it. No one comes close to it. Notwithstanding what some people are claiming now. But the real difference often is made, and the generals admit to it, even the Middle East, is by careful diplomacy of people talking to people to understand them. I've been in sports all my life, and when you play sports, you forget that someone across from you is of a different nationality, different ethnic group, different religion, because they can kick your ass. But the camaraderie you develop afterwards. I used to go boxing in the ghettos of Los Angeles for years. The warmth you feel. First they were sort of wary of a white guy coming down to 70th and Hoover or 100th and Broadway. Then after a short while, when they realized I was for real, there was an embracing attitude that I found with my Israeli friends who played with me on the Maccabees. We won the US championship in 1973. I was the token German. We had 2 Ethiopians from the national team, 7 Israelis from the Israeli First Division, and we won the US championship against a team from Cleveland. Never forget it. But we became close friends. That was in 73. I just had dinner with them last Tuesday. We all got a little drunk and remembered and reminisced. All played better in reminiscence than we did in reality. So, Yogi, you have the same impulse that I have. That's why I've always appreciated you. You also believe in reaching out. We're all together in this, all of us. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. Out, out, brief candle. Life is but a walking shadow. A poor player that struts and frets as hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. That's a very pessimistic speech by Macbeth, in Macbeth, towards the end of his life. In other words, let us all not take ourselves so terribly seriously. Thank you.
Vielen Dank, Hans. Wunderbar, glatte Eins.